right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this visual explainer where we're going to break down the absolutely incredible biological machinery of the wolf's jaw. You know, this isn't just a simple story about an animal having sharp teeth. It's the story of a perfect evolutionary engine, refined over millions of years to create one of our planet's most efficient predators. We're going to focus on the fascinating anatomy and the sheer raw power behind every single bite. So, let's start with a bit of a provocative question to cut through all the noise. How strong is a wolf's bite, really? The internet is absolutely full of wild myths and exaggerated numbers. Well, today, we're cutting through those myths and diving straight into the concrete, scientifically backed biomechanics. We're going to understand not just the raw force a wolf can generate, but exactly how its body is beautifully engineered from the ground up to make that happen. To really get this, we have to look back in time, looking all the way back to the end of the Mesozoic era. And through the 50 million years of relentless evolution that followed, we can see this biological blueprint taking shape. The first specialized teeth popped up tens of millions of years ago, but it was really during the Pleistocene that things got intense. That's when the massive Beringian wolves appeared. They were hunting giant megafauna, so they had to evolve incredibly massive jaws to handle those absolute giants. And from those harsh, unforgiving conditions emerged the highly integrated skull of the modern gray wolf. Literally a perfect meat processing machine. The difference here is pretty staggering right off the bat. On top, we've got the robust wild wolf skull. Notice that really flat transition between the forehead and the nose, and this is absolutely crucial, that massive bony ridge on the top of the skull. That's the sagittal crest. It acts as a massive anchor for their huge chewing muscles. Now compare that to the domesticated dog skull on the bottom. You can clearly see a steep depression on the forehead and just a more regressed anatomy overall. In the wolf, every single piece of that skull is arranged and fused to withstand extreme mechanical stress during a fight with prey without taking any damage. Now, the absolute star of this anatomical toolkit is the carnassial pair. This is a highly specialized set of teeth, specifically the fourth upper premolar and the first lower molar. Guys, these aren't teeth for just casually chewing your food. Nature literally designed them to be precision slicing tools, engineered to shear completely cleanly through tough meat, thick tendons, and muscle. When a wolf bites down, it's a perfectly precise mechanical action. First, the jaw forcefully snaps shut. At that exact moment, the massive temporalis muscle, which remember is anchored to that crest on top of the skull, applies gigantic pressure. Then, those carnassial teeth slide tightly past each other, exactly like the blades of giant self-sharpening scissors. This incredibly smooth vertical motion completely eliminates wasted friction and translates all that raw muscle power into a clean surgical slice. But here's an incredibly fascinating evolutionary quirk that makes the wolf so unique. Unlike some other wild dogs that evolved only to slice meat and completely lost their ability to crush, the wolf actually kept something special on its lower molar. It's called a basoned talonide. Basically a special little crushing basin with two cusps. So a wolf's jaw doesn't just slice muscle, it has a built-in anvil. This allows them to shatter massive bones and get to that highly nutritious marrow, which drastically boosts their chances of surviving a brutal winter. All right, let's get to the numbers you've been waiting for. When a large adult wolf really engages all of this muscle and bone architecture to its maximum voluntary effort, its bite can reach an absolutely unbelievable 1,500 psi. To put that into physical pressure terms that might be a bit easier to visualize, we're talking about a staggering 105 atmospheres of pressure. To really put that 105 atmospheres into perspective, imagine all of that gigantic pressure localized down to just a few square millimeters on the very tips of a wolf's teeth. That kind of localized pressure is comparable to the crushing forces you'd find down in deep ocean trenches. When a wolf bites down like that, it completely overwhelms the structural limits of even the thickest bones, like a moose or bison femur, and the bone just snaps. This incredible pressure directly impacts their hunting efficiency, allowing the pack to take down prey much larger than themselves and utilize literally every single gram of nutrients. Now, if we want to look at these forces objectively and compare different animals, we need to talk about the Bite Force Quotient, or BFQ. Simply put, this is a metric that adjusts an animal's absolute bite force based on its body weight. It basically acts as an allometric equalizer. It levels the playing field for us. You see, when comparing animals, looking at absolute bite force in raw newtons or psi is naturally always going to favor massive, heavy animals. A giant bear is just always going to have a bigger jaw than a small dog. But BFQ strips away that size advantage entirely. It reveals the true biomechanical efficiency of the skull's design, letting us see who the real pound-for-pound champion of the animal kingdom actually is. And here is where we find an absolutely fascinating twist in the data: the gap in relative bite force between male and female wolves. While males have a BFQ of around 130, females hit an average of 141. So even though female wolves are physically smaller and lighter, they bite significantly harder relative to their size. This is a brilliant evolutionary adaptation. Females need to compensate for their smaller build so they can be just as efficient at bringing down massive prey for the pack, while also needing that extra power to fiercely defend their pups at the den. When we look at average BFQ across different species, the wolf's superiority is undeniable. The gray wolf, with its average of 136, easily outperforms legendary predators like the African lion at 128. It even beats the spotted hyena, which is famous for being a bone crusher, at 124. Pound for pound, the design of the wolf's skull makes it a much more biomechanically efficient and lethal tool. Of course, just to be completely thorough and settle those internet debates once and for all, we do have to look at the absolute numbers too. Now, the saltwater crocodile is in a league of its own at about 3,700 psi. But right behind it, among the top-tier mammalian predators, the wolf stands tall with that extreme 1,500 psi. It clearly outpaces the hyena at 1,100 and the lion at 1,000. And it definitely puts things into perspective when people compare domestic dogs to wolves. A large domesticated dog maxes out around 238 psi. A wolf's bite is literally more than 6 times stronger. It's a completely different biological universe. So, keeping all of these mind-blowing biomechanical facts together, 50 million years of evolution, a perfectly integrated skull generating 105 atmospheres of crushing pressure, and an efficiency that outclasses a lion. The next time you look at your dog snoozing on the couch, ask yourself, can you still spot the ancient shadow of this perfectly engineered, bone-crushing wild ancestor? The paths of evolution and domestication are just endlessly fascinating. Thanks for tuning in to this explainer. Keep wondering about the natural world, and we'll catch you on the next one.